In this episode, I talked to John Barrett of AF Group to find out how current geopolitics are really impacting fertiliser supply to the UK. And here's some advice for UK farmers. And welcome to the next episode of Agri-TechE's Agri-Chat. And I'm here with John Barrett, the Chief Agricultural Officer of the AF Group. John, great to be here. Thank you for having us.
No, pleasure.
So what we wanted to talk about today is the whole situation about fertiliser availability in the UK for UK farmers. Before we do that, can you just tell us a little bit about what the AF Group does? Obviously, you save your members time and money, but
Absolutely.
do you want to expand?
How do we do that?
Expand on that a bit.
Okay. So we're a buying group. We're a cooperative. We've got 3,000 members across the country. About just under half our members are in Norfolk. So that's where the buying group originates from. It was set up in the 1960s. The buying groups, Loddon farmers and mid-Norfolk farmers. And in the 1960s, why did they set it up? Why do they do these things? Because farming was really tough. And they needed to work together to try and counter this difficult time and keep control of things within the farmer's hands. So they worked together to achieve that. And then over time, those two businesses then merged in 2003, and we have the Anglia Farmers, or the AF Group as we have today. And we're buying all sorts of products. So we're crop inputs, livestock inputs, fuel, insurance, telecoms, everything and anything that you might need on a farming or agricultural rural business.
Brilliant. And so we're hearing a lot in the press, aren't we, about availability of fuel and fertiliser and the recent geopolitical events, and there's lots of scare stories about price of food and how worried are you for both UK farming but also your members?
So it's a difficult one. Of course, I'm worried for our members. You know, it's important that they've got their inputs at a price that they can make a margin on growing their crops. That's really, really important. Supply side, we've been buying fertiliser for members right the way through the last 2 months, or how long this conflict's been going on for. So we've had supply of product, and we'll continue to have that. You know, the suppliers adapt. We're lucky we are where we are. We're taking product of fertiliser in from the States, in from Europe. We've got resources. So supply of fertiliser, I'm confident we can get the fertiliser on farms.
And we hear a lot, don't we, about the word volatility on farm around prices. Is fertiliser subject to that volatility in terms of its pricing?
You're right, we do. And we see volatility in fuel, for instance. Huge volatility. You know, it's up 3p, down 4p, up 7p. You know, it reacts really quickly to what's happening to the price of oil, whereas fertiliser hasn't. Fertiliser has gone up and went up slowly, and we were at about 525 for a nitram, and now earlier this week it came down a bit, and then prices are out, and they're going to be withdrawn at the end of today, and then we'll get a new price next week. So we don't know where that'll be, but it's not as volatile at all. It's just gone up.
Wow. So how do farm businesses plan? I mean, do they have to ring you on a daily basis? Because don't farmers buy their fertiliser quite a long way in advance?
Historically, they have, and if you go back over 20 years, more often than not, probably 8 out of 10, the best time, or the lowest cost fertiliser has been at what we call the new season. At that point, when the fertiliser price after the crop, the previous years had all their fertiliser applied, and before harvest, usually it used to be about cereal show time. They would release prices, and that would often be the best time to buy your fertiliser. But there are years when it isn't, and this might be just one of those times. We don't know yet. Right. Only we'll know in hindsight. So how do you manage that situation? And it's a little bit like selling grain. You don't sell all your grain in one day. So should you buy all your fertiliser on one day? And perhaps perhaps have a bit more of a strategy. We're talking to our members and saying, have a strategy. Think about, how could you do this? Just because you've always done that doesn't mean to say it's the right thing to do. Have a strategy. We know we've got CBAM coming in January next year.
Do you want to just expand on CBAM?
So CBAM is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and that's a tax on the carbon of the product coming in on the fertiliser. So that potentially could add £50 a tonne to your fertiliser, which is another 10% on where we are today of prices. So we know that's coming, so we can have a strategy that avoids that for next season's crop.
Yeah.
So that still gives us 6-7 months to get that fertiliser on farm, to make sure we avoid that. But we have got 6-7 months. We haven't got to do it all in one day. And there has actually, I mean, we, in terms of that CF Industries Nitram, there's been a limited amount put onto the market. So you probably might not want to do it all in one day anyway, because not everybody could do it all on one day.
Yeah.
Because it's just not releasing that amount of price product.
Okay. So necessity is often the mother of innovation. And do you think that the current situation is going to see, I don't know, maybe more of a drive to develop or use biologicals, for example, or precision application to be able to just make more use of what you have been able to get at a reasonable price? Where do you see the market going as a result of this?
So I think we've known about this rise in prices for a little while. So people have been more conscious about what they've applied to the previous crop. Mm-hmm. So they've probably got a little bit left in stock from the crop that's in the ground at the moment, and they'll carry that forward. And then they'll focus on what they're using and perhaps cut back a little bit. Where historically they might have put 210 kilos a hectare of nitrogen on a crop of wheat, they might bring that back to 180, or if they were at 180 to 170. It makes sense to do that, but also look at alternatives. Mm-hmm. And I think it'll drive that market to look at some of these alternative ways of pulling nitrogen out of the air, out of the soil, into these plants, and creating that environment they can do that. And also the use of organic fertilizers. Yeah. Let's try and get more timely use of those, applying stuff in the spring, organic fertilizers in the spring. So perhaps having lagoons for more storage, and applying stuff in the spring. I spoke to one of our members growing a crop of rye, not a single kilo of inorganic nitrogen had been applied to that crop.
Wow.
It's brilliant. What a success.
Yeah.
So I think, high prices, absolutely sharpen the mind, focus the mind on doing something a little bit different.
And what's the difference between solid and liquid artificial synthetic fertilizers, inorganic fertilizers, and why might you use one over the other?
So you'd have to speak to the salespeople of the liquid and the salespeople of the solid, and they would give you 100 reasons why one is better than the other. There is a differentiation in price between the solid and the liquid, and you've got a nitram of 34.5%, or an extran of 33.5% nitrogen, or you've got a urea which is a 46% nitrogen. So you've got all these different products that are available, and some farmers will be open to change. Perhaps they've always used liquid, and perhaps this year, because of the differential in price per kilo, it might pay to go and buy a fertiliser spinner and put some solid on. Or alternatively, they might prefer to use liquid because they like the accuracy of it and the precision of it, and they can perhaps lower their rate. There's all sorts of reasons for doing both, but the economics will drive some of those decisions. And I think farmers are treating their farm as a business more than they ever have. And so they'll be looking at that cost per kilo of nitrogen. And we're sending out weekly updates with the cost per kilo of nitrogen of all the different products, so people can compare quite easily. It gives that sort of level playing field to be able to compare the different prices before they make their decision about what they buy.
Sure. And there's now technology emerging, isn't there, to enable people to be much more, get that feedback loop about the plant's performance when they've actually had an application of fertiliser. You can use hyperspectral satellites and things to see what's actually going on in the plant. So I guess farmers have a much tighter feedback loop now. I was reading an article this morning where they're talking about spray and pray. I think those days are behind us, aren't they?
No, we're much more advanced now, aren't we? There's much more thought going into it. You know, the uptake of nitrogen use efficiency is crucial, isn't it? When it's £500 a tonne, if you're at 60% use efficiency, that's a really poor return on your investment. The closer we can get that to 100%, the better. And there's lots of projects across the country that are looking at ways of how we can improve that, and actually, as you say, monitoring it as you apply it, see the uptake, test the leaf, all these sorts of things that will really help improve that efficiency. Therefore, you might not have to apply as much total nitrogen to achieve the same result.
Got it. So your message to UK farmers would be, don't panic, be mindful of, be open-minded for where you're getting your fertiliser. Would they talk to their agronomist? What's your advice to farmers?
So yeah, absolutely that. Be open. Don't just because you've always bought your fertiliser from one particular supplier, you don't have to. You're not restricted to that person. We're lucky as AF. We've got great line of sight of the whole industry. We can see what's going on, and talk to us. Talk to your agronomist absolutely about how you can apply it better and more efficiently. And talk to us about the products that you can buy, which will give you a lower cost per unit of nitrogen.
Got it. And we've talked mainly about nitrogen for obvious reasons, but is there a pinch point for other essential elements, inputs? Are we seeing the same kind of constraints, or is it nitrogen the main one?
So some and some. So if you look at DAP, for instance, that's gone up and is still going up. That's hugely expensive compared to where it was. And so again, people will be looking at alternative ways of getting that phosphate out of the soil, a P liberator, those sorts of things. But also sulfur. Historically, a lot of people applied nitrogen and sulfur together because we recognize use efficiency. It's more available if there's sulfur there in the soil. And so, but how we get that sulfur, perhaps there's a polysulfate mine up in Yorkshire that's producing huge amounts of fertiliser, most 80% of which is exported. And so it's there, and that hasn't gone up in price much because it's UK mined. It's a bit of extra haulage costs these days. But actually it hasn't gone up to the same proportion. So perhaps think about just having a straight nitrogen and a polysulfate to achieve the same thing. So a bit of open-mindedness of doing things slightly differently.
There we go. The only thing for certain is change, right?
Absolutely.
And AF, saving our members time and money. I think you've given us a good overview there as to how you can help. John Barrett, AF Group, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for being on AgriChat.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And that was John Barrett, Chief Agricultural Officer of AF Group. As we heard, AF has over 3,000 members across the UK, supplying inputs and everything needed to run a rural business. To find out more, head to their member page on the Agri-TechE website or go to af.farm.